Happy are the people who grieve, because they will be made glad. Happy are people who are humble, because they will inherit the earth. Blessed are the humble, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed, happy. We've talked a little bit about the different words that are used to introduce these ideas and the images, and happy is not exactly the right word, but it's sometimes much better than blessed or blessed. And blessed is sometimes a good word, but there's some other words we've used that don't quite measure up, and it's hard to get the idea of, it's almost a sense of filled with joy and sacred joy and gracious joy and filled with blessing are you who. And that takes a long time, doesn't it? But today is blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. How many of you really want to be meek? One. You do now? Oh, okay. Blessed are the humble. Blessed are the gentle. Blessed are the... And I'm going to use the word gentle today for several reasons, but I want you to reach out for that word, partly because meek, sometimes when we hear the word meek, we're looking for Matilda and Marvin Milquetoast. Somewhere in the back of the congregation, afraid to look anybody in the eye. And in Jesus' day, that isn't probably what it meant. It had a whole different word. A whole different meaning. And in part because blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. In that day, as I've said before, the Roman boot and the Roman sword said, we'll tell you who inherits the earth. An empire shall dominate. But even in Jesus' home country, there were those who were in and those who were out. They were the clean and the priestly and the ones who did all the rituals properly, and there were the unholy, unwashed, and unclean and not welcome. And to say, blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth, is a very strange thing to say. Until I had a professor in seminary, and he was teaching a class of us, it was a small group, intentionally small group, and we were together and to talk about what had gone on in the week before, and most of us were doing some kind of ministry and some kind of church, and we're all brand new seminarians. We are definitely not humble. We are very full of ourselves. We're very full of what we know. Hey, and we were having a great deal of fun, and we came to the class, and we were dealing with, sometimes parishioners aren't easy to get along with. Really? I know that surprised all of you. But in those other churches, hey, yeah. You've read about those churches? Yes. And so we would come and discuss what was going on in our lives and what was working and what wasn't working. And Dr. Spangler, did any of you know Dr. Spangler? John Spangler. Love the man. But at the time I didn't. Because we would get into these discussions, and sometimes we were pretty animated about our righteousness and the unrighteousness of those we were dealing with. We could kind of put it that way. And John would listen for a while, and then he would say, and what does the Lord require of you? What? What? What do you mean, what does the Lord... Most of us hadn't read Micah yet. And this went on for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. And finally, we were in this fairly heated discussion about something, and Dr. Spangler said, and what does the Lord require of you? And we were like, why do you keep asking us that? What does the Lord require of us? Well, let's see. We have all these things we have to fill out for our boards of ministry. And we... You know, we could go through all the long list of the things that were required of us, and John would just say, what does the Lord require of you? But Micah 6:8, to do justice, to love mercy is what we said back then, and to walk in humble fellowship with your God. And we would go, how does that help me get a youth leader? An adult who will come to on Wednesday, you know. But he would keep repeating this and repeating this. What does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, love, kindness, and walk in humble fellowship with your God. What does the Lord require of you but to be gentle and loving in all that you do? Justice, kindness. And the beginning of that passage in Micah 6:8, Micah says, what can I bring that would satisfy you, O Lord? If I bring you 10,000 of the best of the National Western Stock Show, the different stock, would that make you? No. What if I offer you this? What if I offer you my firstborn? No, you've told me what is good. To do justice. To love kindness. And walk in humble fellowship with your God. And so, I want to share with you today 2 or 3 stories of how I've seen that work and how the earth gets inherited in very particular ways. And I'm going to start with the North Rim of the Grand Canyon, where I worked during the summers when I was in college. And the North Rim is separated from everything. If you haven't been there before, it's 230-something miles to the South Rim. It's 80 miles to the nearest town, and that would be Kanab, Utah. And people would get there and often struggle with, there's no phone, there's no television. We did have electricity. And when the different youth tours would come through, and we had a lot of tours that came from the east, we discovered there were certain tours that we had to lie to. Such as, you better stay in your cabin tonight because they're mountain lions. Or they're bears. Or, whatever we could do because they would get out of the cabins and race havoc all night long sometimes. But I discovered my very first year, and I got to watch it 3 years in a row, a group that came in from New York City, and they would arrive on Friday afternoon, and they would park their bus, and they wouldn't move until Sunday morning, the bus. It sat all day Saturday because Saturday was their Sabbath. And these were Orthodox Jewish kids from New York City. I also discovered that everybody would cancel their days off or trade their days off when those kids came in. And after watching them for 3 years, I understood completely why. While they were there, they were not allowed to really walk very far. That was against their Sabbath rules. And so they were mostly stayed in the area of the lodge, and they were gentle and kind and thoughtful. And they had their Sabbath worship service where they could look out over the canyon. And then when that was over and their Sabbath was over, they would invite, and then I discovered why people really were canceling their days off. Not only were they a joy to serve, but they would invite everybody to come join them in dancing and in celebration. And then I discovered that the bellhops, who hated lots of groups because they either had heavy bags, tipped them poorly, or were just mean, they would fight to get up to work for these kids. Well, the reason was because they were nice and they were gentle, and they brought all their blessed kosher food, and because they liked us, they would leave it as they left. Best tip ever. And I realized the entire staff stopped what they would normally be doing to be present and caring and attentive to those who walked gently in love of God while they were there. Great lesson. My guess is if I said, who are the gentle in your church and who would you stop everything for, you all could start making a list, couldn't you? I haven't been here long, but I know some of you that well. Blessed are the gentle. Now, gentle doesn't mean wimpy. No. I want you to hear the name Rosa Parks. The story of Rosa Parks is amazing. A faith journey in which she recognized that she was a woman and a person of dignity and worth and value. And in that part of Alabama at that time, there were people who said no. A few weeks ago at a school where I do reading, we were reading about Rosa Parks. And the young girl I was reading with, we got to the part where she's on the bus and the bus operator, the driver, is yelling at her and telling her she has to go back and sit down in the back of the bus, or she has to go stand in the back of the bus because these seats are for the whites. And she refuses. And the illustration is of a face that is so angry, and of a face that is gentle. And the little girl that I was reading with said, "Can we close the book?" And I realized she was scared because she didn't know what was going to happen next. And so I said, "Here, we'll skip this page and we'll go to the end of the book." And at the end of the book, of this particular book, there is a scene of Rosa Parks and the bus driver and others all standing together, all with smiles on their face. And she went, "Blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth." Blessed are those who are gentle, because the earth isn't about values, the values we have in our pocket, the values we have in our checkbook, the values that we think we have in all the stuff that we have. The earth is filled with the fullness of the Lord. And the love of Christ, for God so loved the world, is abundant and rich. And there are those who celebrate it and those who live it and those who embrace it in wonderful ways and bring life. And so now I'm going to show you a photo of two old men, and neither have a whole lot of power. One is known as the Dalai Lama, a poor monk who heads a group of people who are outcast from their own country. He lives in exile. And the other is I don't know how well you can see that, but the other who's kind of got his arms like this, you know who that is? Bishop Desmond Tutu. How many of you had a chance to hear Bishop Desmond Tutu speak? And you know, when you get a chance to hear him speak, and when you're there live and in person, he has this smile that just radiates. And he just looks at you and he's like, I dare you to feel sorry for yourself. I dare you to feel like this is the worst day of your life, because he's someone who has lived in the very worst of circumstances in South Africa, excluded from the church, which said, yeah, you deserve to have less than the rest of us. Excluded from the country, excluded from all kinds of possibilities. But he's somebody that in his age has come to say there are two things in life that matter. And one is forgiveness in Jesus Christ, and the other is joy. And so Bishop Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama have come together out of their circumstances and have written a book called The Book of Joy. And if you just read the introduction to these two men and how they have come out of their various circumstances, and they meet each other like two seventh graders who want to punch each other and have a good time with each other and are just glad to see each other, and they're just full of this radiant joy, and they spend a week. Blessed are the gentle. Blessed who don't have to harm another. Blessed are those who don't have to exclude another. Blessed are those whose arms are wide enough in Jesus' love to welcome one another. Blessed are those who go by other traditions but welcome us into the love of God. Blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. Amen, amen. And amen.
God's grace is available to us at all times. God's grace frees us from slavery to sin, guilt, and shame. His grace allows us to pursue good works. God's grace enables us to be all that He intends us to be. God's grace is truly amazing. It is unchanging and unfailing. Not only does it provide for our salvation, it enables us to live an abundant life in Jesus Christ. Call it what it is. Call it grace. Let's stand and sing.
It's the light that pierces through you to the darkest hidden place. It knows your deepest secrets, but it never looks away. It's the gentle hand that pulls you from the judgment of the crowd. When you stand before them guilty and you got no way out. Some may call it foolish and impossible, but for every heart it rescues, it's a miracle. It's nothing less than scandalous. placing crowns upon